When 24-year-old Emma brings her premature baby boy, Noah, home from the NICU, her world is fragile but full of hope. With oxygen tubes keeping her newborn alive, every moment is critical. But Emma lives under the same roof as her controlling parents, who never approved of her becoming a mother so young and out of wedlock. One stormy night, with the power out and tempers high, Emma wakes to a quiet that terrifies her. The oxygen machine is off. Her father's phone is plugged into the wall. Her mother stands nearby. What Emma sees next shatters her faith in family forever. Without confrontation, without a goodbye, she disappears with her child in the middle of the night, changing hospitals, homes, and maybe her identity. But secrets don't stay buried, and when her past finds her again, Emma must decide how far she'll go to protect her son, and whether justice means revenge. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours straight since Noah came home from the hospital, and yet, the exhaustion never dulled my instinct. Something woke me. It wasn't sound. It was the absence of sound. No soft hiss from the oxygen machine. No faint pulse of reassurance. Just silence. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. The blackout had started around 9 p.m., we'd lit candles, cursed the outdated wiring in the house. And my dad had barked at me for hovering over the baby's corner like a paranoid wreck, but the generator should have kicked in by now. The backup battery for Noah's oxygen tank could only last so long. I rushed to his crib in the dark, my hands trembling. Noah lay still, too still. The plastic tubes at his nose were slack. Air. No hum. My fingers scrambled for the machine's switch. Nothing. No lights. My breath caught in my throat. Then I saw the extension cord, yanked from the wall. I followed it with my eyes. It ended at the base of the kitchen island, where a single phone lay charging. My father's phone. And sitting 2 feet away on the couch, legs crossed, sipping lukewarm coffee like it was just another evening, was my mother. What happened? I asked, my voice barely there. She didn't look up. The power went out. We needed to charge the phone. You should really stop being so dramatic. I couldn't move. My baby could have died. For a phone. I grabbed the oxygen canister from the emergency bag, flipped the valve with shaking hands, and cradled Noah to my chest. His tiny body felt warm, but his lips had a bluish tint. I turned the oxygen on and counted every second until his color returned. Then I looked at my mother again. She hadn't moved. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand why, but I didn't. Because deep down, I already knew. They never saw him as family. He was a consequence, a burden, a symbol of my failure to become the daughter they wanted. I was 24, a single mom, barely employed, back living with the parents who had never made me feel safe to begin with. And they had just proven that even my son's life meant less to them than their convenience. That night, I didn't yell. I didn't confront them. I didn't cry. Instead, I packed out silently, efficiently. One duffel bag with clothes. One thermal bag for Noah's meds. The folder with hospital records. I left the used oxygen tank and took the spare. Then I wrapped Noah in 2 blankets, strapped him into the carrier, and walked out the back door into the cold, damp night. We disappeared without a sound. I didn't have a destination. Just an instinct. Get far. Fast. I found a motel 20 miles away and checked in under a fake last name. I used the emergency fund I'd been saving since I first found out I was pregnant. The next morning, I called a different hospital, one I remembered from my cousin's delivery last year. I asked if they had space. They did by noon. Noah had a new pediatric team. By evening, we had a caseworker assigned. And for the first time since leaving the NICU, I could breathe without waiting for the next emergency. But I didn't tell anyone where I went. Not even my best friend. Especially, not my parents. They hadn't called, hadn't texted. Either they hadn't noticed I was gone, or they had just didn't care. And maybe that was the most terrifying part. Because what kind of people unplugged their own grandson's oxygen to charge a phone? And what else were they capable of? The hospital smelled like antiseptic and safety. It was newer, quieter, and the nurses didn't look at me like I was overreacting when I triple-checked Noah's monitor. They called me Mom with warmth. Not judgment. Not pity. On the second day, a woman in a navy blazer appeared at the foot of my chair in the pediatric wing. She introduced herself as Hannah Monroe, a social worker assigned to us as part of the intake protocol for transferred infants with respiratory support. Her tone was kind, but probing. "Emma," she said gently, flipping open a thin folder. Can you walk me through why you left your previous hospital and brought Noah here on your own? I hesitated. Every instinct told me to lie. Say it was insurance. Say it was distance. Anything but the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I told her everything. From the flicker of silence that woke me to the phone cord in the wall, from my mother's cold eyes to the blue hue in my baby's lips, the words came in waves, not desperate, just final, like exhaling something I'd been holding too long. Hannah didn't interrupt. She just wrote things down in long, slow strokes. When I finished, she closed the folder and looked up. Has anything like this happened before? She asked. I thought about it. Not exactly like that, but close. The passive-aggressive remarks. The way my father would slam doors when Noah cried. The time my mother called him that problem when she thought I couldn't hear. The way they turned down the heater to save money even though the doctor said Noah couldn't risk a chill. Not like this, I said. But they never really treated him like he mattered. Her eyes softened. Emma, what you described is considered neglect, and depending on intent, potentially criminal negligence. Have you considered pressing charges? The question made my stomach twist. Because the answer wasn't easy. What would people say? That I was turning against my own family. That I was being dramatic. That maybe it was just a mistake, and I should let it go. But then I thought of Noah's chest, still and silent. And I realized the only mistake would be pretending it never happened. I don't know yet, I whispered. She nodded. You don't have to decide right now. But if you want to protect him, we can help. That night, I stayed in the hospital room, sitting upright in the chair while Noah slept in his crib. I watched him breathe, counted each rise and fall of his tiny chest, and I thought about what kind of mother I wanted to be. The next morning, the front desk called my room. There was a visitor asking for me. My heart sank. I hadn't told anyone where we were, not even Maya, my closest friend. So either the hospital had made a mistake, or someone had found us. I crept to the reception area, trying to look casual, though every part of me was bracing for a confrontation. And then I saw her. Maya taut her eyes wide, her mouth half open in shock. Emma, she said, stepping closer. What the hell is going on? Your mom said you ran off. That you stole hospital equipment. That you took off in the middle of the night like some lunatic. I had to beg your aunt to tell me where you might be. I stared at her, stunned. My mother was spreading lies already. I didn't steal anything, I said, barely above a whisper. I left because they unplugged Noah's oxygen. For a phone, she blinked, once, twice, then sat down hard on one of the waiting room chairs. I knew they were messed up, she muttered. But I didn't think. Jesus. I wanted to cry from the relief of being believed. But then she said something that shifted everything. They've already called CPSM. They're saying you're unstable. That Noah's not safe with you. And just like that, the cold I'd been running from crept back into my spine. Because now, it wasn't just about escape. It was about war. The knock at the hospital room door came just after lunch. It was firm, official, not a nurse, not a visitor. I opened it and saw two people, a man in a gray blazer and a woman with a clipboard. Both wore those polite, unreadable expressions that meant one thing: authority. Behind them, Hannah, my caseworker, stood with her jaw set tight, like she already knew what was coming. Emma Carter, the man asked. Yes, we're from Child Protective Services. We'd like to speak with you regarding a report that was filed about your son, Noah. I looked to Hannah, who gave me a small nod. It's standard procedure when a report is made, she said quietly. But you don't have to do this alone. I'll stay. I didn't even need to ask who made the report. They sat across from me in the small hospital consultation room. The woman flipped her folder open. The report claims that you left your home with an infant under medical care without notifying appropriate guardians. That you failed to provide a stable residence, and that there is concern about your mental state and ability to care for your child. My jaw clenched. They're lying, I said. They unplugged my baby's oxygen machine to charge a phone. I didn't flea protected him. The man wrote something down. Can you provide any documentation to support your claim? I turned to Hannah, who slid a printed incident report across the table. It detailed the medical intake from our arrival, including Noah's oxygen levels and the activation of the emergency tank. It also noted my statement given that morning. Everything was on record. I watched their eyes scan the document. No reaction. No change in tone. The woman closed the folder. We'll need to conduct a home visit to verify current living conditions. Where are you staying? In a motel, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I left my parents' house because I no longer believe it's safe for me or for Noah. They exchanged a glance, and then she asked it. Would you be willing to allow temporary custody to a relative while the investigation is ongoing? It took me a moment to process what she meant. No, I said, a little too loudly. Absolutely not. They are the danger. I'm not handing my child over to the people who nearly killed him. The man held up a hand. We're not making any decisions today. This is just the beginning of the process. But I knew better. Because once CPS is in your life, the narrative can slip through your hands so easily. All it takes is one misstep, one misunderstanding. And your baby is gone. After they left, Hannah turned to me. We're going to need more than just your word, Emma. If there's any history of abuse or neglect from your parents, now is the time to bring it forward. I hesitated, because I'd spent years trying to normalize what I grew up with, the yelling, the silence, the cold withdrawal of affection used like punishment. The way my father once locked me out of the house at 16 for missing curfew, the time my mother poured bleach on a teddy bear I'd gotten from a boy, calling it trashy. None of it ever left a mark. None of it was enough to call the police. But now, every memory felt like a piece of evidence I'd overlooked. That night, I called Maya, told her everything, every incident, every manipulation, every time they made me feel like I was nothing. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said, you need someone to back you. Someone who can say they've seen it. I don't think anyone else ever did, I said quietly. What about your aunt? The one who told me where you were. It took a moment to remember. Aunt Leela, my mother's estranged sister. The one who only showed up on birthdays and never stayed long. The one who once whispered to me, you're not crazy. They just make you feel that way. She had always kept her distance. But maybe she was the only one who could pull me out of this. I dialed her number with trembling fingers. She answered on the second ring. Emma. Her voice was cautious. Aunt Lila, I need your help. It's about Noah, and my parents. I think they're trying to take him from me. There was a pause. Then, quietly, I knew they'd do something like this one day. I'm in, tell me everything. Aunt Leela didn't ask for proof. She didn't question my version. She just listened, and then she said something I hadn't expected. I kept a folder. I paused. A folder. From years ago, she continued. I started it when I noticed the way your mother treated you. I didn't think anyone would believe me without something concrete, so I documented things, notes, emails she sent me, voicemails. I even printed a message she left about you being too unstable to handle a child one day. I always hoped I'd never have to use it. A strange mix of rage and gratitude welled up in my throat. Can I use it? I asked. You can have it. It's yours. She agreed to meet me the next morning, outside the motel where I was staying. She came in, an old car with a cracked windshield and an oversized cardigan that swallowed her shoulders. She looked tired. Like someone who had been running from the same ghosts for decades. I was the black sheep too, she said, handing over a manila envelope. You were the only one who ever reminded me I wasn't crazy. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, dates, observations. She'd even printed screenshots from old Facebook posts where my mother mocked my mental health struggles in vague, venomous ways. There was a copy of a school report from when I was 14, flagged for emotional distress, possibly related to home environment. It had never been followed up. I took it all to Hannah at the hospital. She read through it slowly, carefully, like each piece was a tile in a pattern she'd been trying to see. This changes things, she said. This establishes a long-term pattern of emotional abuse. Combined with what happened to Noah, it creates a narrative of generational neglect. It doesn't guarantee anything, but it strengthens your credibility. But credibility wasn't safety, not yet. Later that afternoon, CPS called again. They wanted to schedule the home visit for the next day. I told them I was still in temporary housing. The motel. It was clean, but bare. No toys, no high chair. Nothing that looked permanent. Hannah pulled me aside. Emma, the home visit is their chance to evaluate not just you but the environment. They're looking for anything that can suggest instability. My chest tightened. I was doing everything I could to keep Noah safe, but to the outside world, it might look like chaos. A mother on the run. A baby in a motel room. I don't have anything else, I said. I can't afford an apartment right now. My parents co-signed my lease last year. I have nowhere else to go. She was quiet. For a beat, I'll make some calls. By the end of the day, a miracle happened. One of the hospital's affiliated shelters for mothers escaping domestic situations had a private room available. It wasn't luxurious, but it was warm, clean, and came with donated baby supplies. A crib, a baby monitor, even a few blankets. That smelled of lavender detergent. I cried when I saw it, because it wasn't just a room, it was a chance. That night, I moved in. Hannah met with the shelter manager to ensure everything was ready for the visit. We set up Noah's things, arranged the folder from Aunt Lila in plain view, and rehearsed possible questions I might be asked. The next morning, CPS arrived. They walked through slowly, peering at the setup, asking questions. I kept my answers calm, even when I felt anything but. I showed them Noah's medical supplies, his prescriptions, the schedule I kept taped to the wall for his feeds and oxygen levels. Then the woman turned to me and said, "Why didn't you call the police when the incident happened?" I froze. Because that was the question I dreaded most. I was afraid they wouldn't believe me, I said. And by the time I got Noah stable, all I could think about was getting far away. I didn't want to waste time arguing. I just wanted him safe. She looked at me for a long moment, then wrote something down. When they left, I collapsed on the bed. Noah curled in my arms. I didn't know what they would decide, but I had done everything I could. That night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was my mother. "You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming." The message haunted me. You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming. It wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. And it didn't come from strangers. It came from the two people who raised me. I stared at my phone long after the text disappeared behind the screen lock. I didn't reply. I didn't even show it to Hannah. Something told me to wait, to observe, because if they were going to act, I needed to be ready. The next day, Maya called in a panic. "Emma, you need to see something," she said, breathless. "Your mom posted a video on Facebook. It's already being shared." My stomach dropped. She sent me the link. I hesitated for a second before opening it. It was my mother, standing in her perfectly polished kitchen, looking into the camera with eyes red from tears, but not real ones. The kind of tears that came from years of manipulation, the kind she could summon like a switch. "My daughter Emma," she began, her voice trembling, "is very sick. She's been struggling since Noah was born. We've tried everything to help her. We've supported her through postpartum depression, through unstable relationships, through her financial troubles. But now she's taken our grandson and run off. She refuses to let us see him. We're afraid for her. And for him." She paused, wiping her eyes dramatically. "She's not a bad person. She's just overwhelmed. And we're asking for your prayers. For her to come home. To let us help. Before it's too late." I sat frozen, the blood draining from my face. It was a performance. A well-practiced lie. Wrapped in just enough truth to make it convincing to anyone who didn't know better. I scrolled through the comments. People were sending support. Calling her brave. Asking if she needed legal help. Someone even said, "Take that baby from her if she's dangerous." I slammed the phone down and covered my face with my hands. I felt the walls closing in again. They weren't trying to get Noah back because they loved him. They were trying to destroy me, and they were using the one tool they'd perfected over the years, reputation. They knew how to look like the victims, and I knew how invisible real abuse could be. That night, I showed Hannah the video. She watched it in silence, her face unreadable. "This isn't proof," I said. "But it's what they've always done. They twist everything, and people believe them." "It's not nothing," she said slowly. "It shows a pattern. They're trying to influence public opinion before legal decisions are even made." She paused. "I'm going to recommend we fast-track the protective custody hearing. You need legal affirmation that Noah stays with you. No more risk of emergency removal. No more ambiguity." "But what if the judge sees that video?" I asked. "What if they believe her?" Hannah looked me in the eyes. "Then we show them the truth." The next 48 hours were a blur of preparation. I contacted the pediatric team. They agreed to provide testimony about Noah's condition upon arrival. Hannah assembled every piece of the file from Aunt Leela. Maya agreed to write a sworn statement about my parents' behavior and my stability as a mother. The hearing was scheduled for Friday morning, just 2 days away. I didn't sleep that week. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's video playing on loop. That voice, that expression, that lie, but I stayed focused. Then, on Thursday night, the night before the hearing, my motel room phone rang. It was the front desk. "There's someone here to see you," the clerk said. "A woman, she says she's your mother." I froze. "Did you tell her I was here?" "No. She just showed up and asked." My chest tightened. I pulled back the curtain just enough to see the parking lot. She was standing next to her car, holding something in her hand. I looked closer. It was a small stuffed bunny. Noah's, the one he'd had in the NICU. She was holding it out in front of her, like a peace offering, or bait. I didn't go outside. I locked the door, drew the curtain again, picked up Noah and held him close, feeling the weight of his tiny breath against my chest. And I realized something. They didn't want him because they loved him. They wanted him because he was a way to control me. Tomorrow, I'd stand before a judge, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to let them write the story. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not the temperature though, that too, but the atmosphere. No drama, no theatrics, just polished floors, fluorescent lights, and a judge who looked like she'd seen too many families rip themselves apart to be shocked by one more. I held Noah tightly in the waiting area, his tiny hand wrapped around my finger. Hannah sat beside me, tapping her pen against a yellow legal pad. Maya was behind us, whispering encouragement. Aunt Leela was already inside, waiting to be called as a witness. Across the room sat my parents. My mother wore a navy blue dress and pearls. My father had shaved, pressed his slacks, and clutched a stack of papers like evidence. When my mother caught my eye, she didn't look away. She tilted her head slightly, the same expression she used when she wanted me to feel like I was being ridiculous. They weren't afraid. They were confident. Because they believed the story they told was more believable than mine. The hearing began. The judge called it an emergency custody dispute with child protection implications. No jury, no cameras, just the gavel and the law. They let my parents speak first. My father stood with his hands behind his back, voice calm and precise. "We are not trying to take Noah away," he said. "We're trying to get our daughter the help she needs. She's overwhelmed. She ran off in the middle of the night. She's refusing all contact. We're concerned for the baby's safety, not because she's malicious, but because she's unstable." My mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue she'd pulled from her purse. "She was never the same after he was born," she added. "She became paranoid, accused us of terrible things. We only unplugged the machine for a moment, and he was fine. But she, overreacted. We didn't want to say anything, but we're afraid she might be suffering from a breakdown." It was rehearsed, word perfect, delivered with the skill of people who had spent their lives pretending to be something they weren't. Then it was my turn. I stood, knees shaking, heart thudding. But I looked at the judge, not my parents. "My baby was on oxygen," I began. And I woke up to silence. They had unplugged his machine to charge a phone. When I confronted them, they acted like it didn't matter. That moment changed everything. I didn't run because I was unstable. I left because I was scared. I handed over the folder from Aunt Leela. I showed the hospital records. One provided Noah's intake report, his oxygen levels upon arrival, and photos from the night we left. Then Aunt Lila took the stand. She didn't cry. She didn't embellish. She just told the truth. That house wasn't safe for Emma when she was growing up. It's not safe now. Her parents are experts at minimizing harm. They'll never hit you. They'll just convince you that you deserve to suffer. I watched them do it to her for years. And when the baby came, I knew it would get worse. My parents looked stunned, for the first time. Their confidence cracked. Then came Maya. She testified about my daily routines, about Noah's care, about how I planned every medical appointment down to the hour, about how I'd never left my child alone, about how much I fought for him, even when no one was watching. And finally, the pediatric specialist from the new hospital. He confirmed Noah's oxygen levels when he arrived. He confirmed the risk of even brief interruptions. He confirmed that if I hadn't acted quickly, Noah's condition could have become critical when all was said and done. The judge called a recess to review. I sat in silence, Noah asleep on my chest. Then the judge returned. She looked at my parents first. "There is enough documented concern here," she said, "to warrant a protective order. Effective immediately, you will have no contact with Emma or Noah unless initiated through legal counsel." My mother gasped. The judge turned to me. Double quotes Ms. Carter, your decision to relocate your son was unconventional. But based on the evidence presented, it was justified. Temporary full custody is granted to you. This case will remain open. And your parenting will be monitored through scheduled visits, but you have demonstrated an intent to protect and provide. That matters. The gavel hit the bench, it was over. At least for now. My mother's eyes found mine as I stood to leave. There was no love in them. Only calculation. She mouthed something I couldn't hear, but I knew what it meant. She wasn't done. After the hearing, I expected relief, maybe even peace. But what I felt was something else entirely. A dull, humming fear that didn't leave. Not when I left the courthouse. Not when I held Noah in my arms that night. Not even when I locked the door to the shelter room and double-checked every window. Because when someone like my mother loses control, they don't retreat, they reconfigure. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. CPS scheduled a follow-up home visit at the shelter. I passed. The new caseworker, a younger woman named Danielle, seemed more empathetic, less mechanical than the last. She noted Noah's healthy weight gain, the consistency in his oxygen levels, and even complimented the organized wall chart I kept by his crib. You're doing everything right, she said with a kind smile. I thanked her, but I didn't relax, because on the 5th day, I got another message. Not a text, not a call, a note, slipped under the door of the shelter room while I was out walking Noah in his stroller. It was handwritten. In tight, familiar cursive. You think, the judge changed the story. But the story isn't over. You'll regret keeping him from us. No signature. But I didn't need one. I showed the note to Hannah, who escalated it immediately. The shelter installed a new lock on my door and added me to their higher-risk monitoring list. A police report was filed, though the officer who took it didn't seem optimistic. They didn't threaten violence, he said with a shrug. Hard to prove intent with wording like this, but I knew better. It wasn't a threat of harm, it was a promise of erosion. They didn't want to strike, they wanted to make me crumble from within. 2 days later, it escalated again. I was walking Noah around the block, just after sunset. The stroller had a canopy pulled low, and I wore a hoodie and sunglasses even though the sun had mostly vanished. I didn't like being recognizable anymore. As I turned a corner near the back lot, I heard it, double quotes Emma. I froze. The voice wasn't loud. It was soft, familiar, worn down at the edges. I turned. It was my father, standing beside a parked car. Hands in his coat pockets, not moving closer. I just want to talk, he said. I stepped back instinctively, putting my body between him and the stroller. You're not supposed to be here, I said. I know, he said. But I needed to say something. Your mother's not herself lately. That word again. Not herself. Like her cruelty was a phase. Like it hadn't always been there. She posted the video, sent the messages, left the note, I said. That is herself. He looked down. For the first time, I saw something close to shame. I didn't know about the oxygen, he said. I swear, I wasn't the one who unplugged it. But you saw it, I snapped. You saw what she did. And you said nothing. You always say nothing. He looked at me, and for the briefest second, he didn't look like my father. He looked like a man caught in someone else's web. She told me she'd already called CPS, that it was the only way to snap you out of it. I thought she was bluffing. She wasn't, I said. He took a step closer. I backed away. I'm not here to fight, he said. I just want to give you something. He pulled a small flash drive from his pocket and placed it on the curb between us. What is it? A security cam clip, he said. From the living room. I didn't know we still had it saved. She deleted most of them, but I found this one backed up. It shows that night. The moment she unplugged it, my breath caught. Why are you giving this to me now? Because she's planning something worse, he said, and I won't be part of it. He turned and walked away. Disappearing into the dusk, I stood there for a long time before picking up the flash drive. That night, I plugged it into Hannah's laptop. It took 10 minutes to find the right clip. It was grainy, timestamped at 2:14 a.m. The power's out. The room is dim. My mother walks into the frame. She looks at the oxygen machine, then at her phone. Then calmly, without hesitation, she unplugs the machine and plugs in the charger. She doesn't look panicked. She doesn't check Noah. She sits back down with her coffee and scrolls. 3 minutes later, I rush in, panic in my face, reaching for the machine. The clip ends. Hannah looked at me. This changes everything, she said. The video clip didn't just tell the truth, it dismantled every carefully constructed lie my mother had told. Every word about mental instability. Every crocodile tear in her courtroom performance, it all unraveled in under 5 minutes of grainy, silent footage. There she was, calm, calculated, unplugging a life-sustaining device without hesitation. No urgency. No confusion. Just convenience. When Hannah sent the clip to the CPS legal team, everything moved quickly. Too quickly. Almost. A new emergency hearing was scheduled within 72 hours. This time, the case wasn't about me defending my ability to parent. It was about her, my mother, the woman who spent her life rewriting reality to suit her version of truth. Now she would have to explain herself in front of the same judge who had already warned her once. On the morning of the hearing, I dressed Noah in his softest outfit, a tiny blue knit set from the NICU days, and held him close as we entered the courthouse again. Aunt Leela was with us, standing taller, this time, Maya too. They weren't just support. They were proof I wasn't alone anymore. My mother arrived last. She walked in like nothing had changed. Wearing the same navy dress, the same false grief etched into her expression. My father wasn't with her. I never asked where he went after the parking lot. Maybe he left for good. Maybe he couldn't face what was coming. When the judge called the session to order, Hannah stood and presented the flash drive. This recording, she said, clearly captures the moment the oxygen machine was unplugged. It contradicts prior statements made by the respondents regarding the nature and intent of their actions. The courtroom was silent as the clip played. The judge watched without blinking. My mother didn't speak, didn't react. Her eyes never left the screen, but her jaw tightened, just enough for me to see it crack through her mask. When the video ended, the judge leaned back. I've seen a lot of things in this courtroom, she said. But rarely do I witness such deliberate, dangerous disregard, cloaked in performative concern. She turned to my mother. You did not act in confusion, or stress, or desperation. You acted with indifference to the welfare of an infant in your care. Then you tried to manipulate this court with false narratives and public campaigns. That is not only unacceptable, it is criminal. A gasp rippled through the room. The judge continued, I am referring this matter for criminal investigation under endangerment and obstruction, and effective immediately. You are to have no contact of any kind with Emma Carter or her child. Direct, indirect, digital, or through third parties. Violation will result in arrest. For the first time since all this began, my mother looked at me, not with anger, not with guilt, with something else, recognition, like she finally saw that I wasn't going to bend again. She didn't speak, just stood, collected her purse, walked out, no tears, no apology, because that would have required her to see someone else's pain, and she never could. After the hearing, I stood outside the courthouse steps, holding Noah to my chest, feeling the summer breeze brush his hair. Reporters weren't there. There were no cheers. No justice banners. Just a quiet end to a long, brutal chapter. But it was enough. In the weeks that followed, the case closed. CPS confirmed I was fit, stable, and free to raise my son without oversight. The shelter helped me transition into a subsidized apartment. Nearby it was small, but bright. Safe hours. Maya visited often. Aunt Lila helped me furnish the place. Second-hand, but beautiful. And Hannah stopped by one last time before her reassignment. You didn't just protect him, she said, nodding toward Noah. You rebuilt the truth. That's harder. I nodded, because I knew. The hardest part wasn't escaping. It was not going back. Weeks turned into months. Noah grew stronger, louder, happier. Every coo, every laugh, every peaceful nap felt like a tiny revolution, and still, I don't tell him about her. Not yet. Maybe one day when he's old enough to ask why we don't have pictures. Why there are no grandparents' visits. Why certain names never get spoken. And when that day comes, I'll tell him. Not the polished version, but the real one. Because that's the legacy I choose. Not silence, but truth.